Got another one.
Reload.
Kill that joker.
Someone's gotta take out the new kill leader. They're too cocky.
Today I'm excited to review the PowerA Fusion Pro 2 controller for you because I think it is a very solid controller and I think I have a differentiated take on it from other reviewers out there. I recently purchased it for $90. It works with the Xbox Series X and S and the Xbox One consoles. So I'm going to do a review of the controller and also perform a direct comparison to the Fusion Pro, the first gen controller that came out in 2019. I mainly play Apex Legends, so my review is going to be more tailored to that game, but my comments are going to be applicable to other games as well. The prior gen model of the Fusion Pro still works well for me. My initial assessment of that controller was spot on. The first gen model is a solid controller and is very reasonably priced for a pro level controller, but I think the second gen model is the better buy because of the superior microphone and audio quality of the headset jack. On average, I buy about one controller per year, so I was approaching the time when I was going to replace my current main controller. I looked at the marketplace for controllers and surprisingly not much has changed since the Series X launched. After looking at just about every possible purchase option, I decided to buy the Fusion Pro 2 because I was happy with the prior gen model. The main alternative I was considering was the Razer Ultimate. It was on sale at a big discount and I was intrigued by the paddle design, but I ultimately decided not to buy it because it was still more expensive than the PowerA Fusion Pro 2 and I was disappointed that there was no way to unmap the normal buttons on the front. You can't unmap the buttons on the Fusion Pro 2, so if you were able to do that on the Razer, I would have purchased it even at the higher price. Now to summarize, the three features of this controller that make it a pro gaming level controller are the following. First, the ability to easily increase the thumbstick heights, which can improve aim. It comes with extra thumbsticks that are taller and with different shaped tops. You can probably find thumbsticks from other OEMs that also fit. Number two, it has trigger locks, which can give a few milliseconds of advantage when firing your gun. And lastly, and the most important factor, it has these removable paddles on the back so that you can perform advanced movement techniques like crouch spamming, which I'll demonstrate in Apex Legends. The way it works is that you can duplicate any regular button or trigger action on any of the back paddles. So these are the same three pro level features included in the first gen model. Another nice benefit of both controllers is the solid build quality. The build quality is better than that of the standard Xbox One controller and the Xbox Series X controller. There is almost no stick drift on the PowerA Fusion Pro 2 and on the first gen model. Now, a lot of reviewers out there are saying that nothing substantive has changed with the new Fusion Pro model, but I'm going to have to disagree pretty strongly here. The new model is clearly the better controller because of the better audio output and microphone quality, even at the higher price point, which is still reasonable and not too much higher than that of the default Xbox Series X controller. The reason why you haven't really heard about this is because PowerA probably doesn't want to sort of broadcast that the first controller had sort of subpar audio and microphone quality. For the normal buttons and triggers, both the first gen and second gen models have virtually identical dimensions, button placement, button sizes, and button feel as a standard Microsoft Xbox One controller, so they feel like the Xbox One controller, not the Xbox Series X controller. Now, there are some differences in terms of textures and things like that compared to each other and compared to the Xbox One controller, but I don't really consider those to be that important. So everything from the button heights to the amount of pressure you needed to click a button are very similar to the prior gen model, which was virtually identical to the native Xbox One controller. So almost all of these parts that you see here are swappable between the controllers. You can use the first gen thumbsticks, the paddle module and the paddles on the second gen model and vice versa. You can put the new faceplates on the old controller, but you can't put the old faceplates on the new controller because the new controller has two extra buttons. The new model has two extra buttons, the share button here and this mic switch, which lets you change the volume and mute the mic. Some people like this feature, but personally I don't use it because all my headsets have this feature already built in. The paddles are also where there are some changes. The paddle module, the modules are identical on these controllers, so you can mix and match them just fine with the prior gen model. It is hard to tell from a video, but the new paddles are still made of metal and hooked to the back using magnets, similar to how the Xbox Elite works. Now, a difference with the new controller is the shape of the paddles. The change is subtle though. The paddles on the new model sit further away from the grips. It's not really that big of a change though. So as you can see here, When I put them both on, the old paddles are closer to touching the grips. The new paddles also extend further down, so this part of the paddle is a bit longer, but not really by that much. The new paddles weigh almost the same amount as the old paddles. My guess on why they changed the shape of the paddles is that perhaps it increases the longevity of the controller, since the new shape may change where the paddle rubs on parts of the back module. But overall, the new paddles are very similar to the old ones and work just as well. If you want to crouch spam in games like Apex Legends, you hold down the trigger like this and then tap on one of the paddles like this. So you can also move the thumbsticks at the same time in order to aim. Now here is an example of this technique in Apex Legends. This technique can give a really big advantage in close quarters gunfights, and therefore it's an important skill to master once you get to around the diamond level in Apex. I designed this 3D printed paddle for the first gen model, and it works with the second gen model. It lets me use the back paddles while also still having all of my fingers on the grips, which I prefer. Now you can find the 3D print files in the description of the video. So I have my hands on the controller like I normally would, and when I want to crouch, I just extend my finger like this. Now if you don't have a 3D printer, you can check out my other video where I discuss how to hold and use a controller with back paddles. The link is in the description of the video. As soon as I learned of the new Fusion Pro controller, I guessed immediately that they improved the audio and microphone quality, since those are the two issues I found in the first controller that were sort of subpar. Now with the prior gen model, the audio quality from the built-in jack had issues for some people like myself. It had a bit of static in mine, but maybe that was just my controller, I don't know. So I don't have that issue on the new controller, so in my mind that makes the new controller the clear winner. I don't recommend that people use the built-in audio jack on any controller, but if you have to use the jack on the Fusion 2, it works as expected. And surprisingly, I actually think the audio quality on the Fusion Pro 2, it might actually be better than that of a standard Xbox One controller and Series X controller. I'm not sure if they changed the audio hardware, software, or production process, or nothing at all. All I know is that my first gen controller had some static and my second gen doesn't. I also noticed that the first gen model didn't work well with a lot of headsets in terms of the microphone. Now for example, the mic on my Razer Kraken Tournament Edition headset didn't work with this prior gen model, but my Astro A03 earbuds did. I was guessing this was because there are different microphone standards, or maybe there was some issues with the production process on the first controller. The new model works fine with the mic on my Razer Kraken Tournament Edition headset, so it seems like the new model is more universally compatible with different microphone standards. Another small but important change is the USB cable. The first gen model used a micro USB connection that had a locking mechanism, but this made it very tough to remove, and it also meant that if the cable ever went bad, you would have difficulty finding a replacement cable that fit the jack. Smartly, the second gen model just uses a regular USB-C connection without a locking mechanism. I also performed an input latency test in Apex Legends on an Xbox Series X using both Fusion Pro models and a standard Xbox One controller. My methodology was I measured the time between the sound of the switch and a button press and the change in state of pixels on my monitor. I had the monitor set to 120 Hz, even though Apex currently only runs at 60 FPS on all consoles. Here are the results. As you can see, all three controllers had nearly identical average input latency in Apex Legends on the Series X. Overall, the new PowerA Fusion Pro 2 is very similar to the first gen model, but the microphone and audio jack seem to work much better on the second gen model. The Fusion Pro 2 is one of the most affordable Xbox controllers with important pro gaming level features, the most important of which are the back paddles. The paddles work great in games like Apex Legends for crouch spamming and other advanced techniques, but only after you adapt to the different way you need to hold the controller with the back paddles. The build quality is also very good. It has very little stick drift. I have my stick dead zone in Apex set to almost 0. Lastly, I want to discuss two small changes to this controller that I think would make it perhaps the most popular third-party controller for the Xbox given its low price point. This can be the go-to controller for games like Halo, Apex Legends, Fortnite, and Warzone if PowerA makes these two changes. First, they need to let users unmap the conventional buttons on the front, especially when clicking the sticks. when you're in a gunfight, it is very easy to accidentally click in the thumbstick on any Xbox controller, which induces an action like punching, depending on what it is mapped to. In gaming, that's called a panic punch. This is very annoying and it often gets you killed. Very few controllers let you unmap the buttons on the Xbox, so you need to be able to unmap the stick clicks completely or be able to transfer the action of the stick click to the paddles. Second, I like the paddle design on the controller, but PowerA really needs to sell different shaped paddles like this one. So this shorter paddle lets me put all of my fingers on the grip while still using the paddles when I need them. The standard paddles take longer for most people to get used to. I wouldn't be surprised if most people don't even use the paddles. Now they could get creative too, experimenting with different types of paddles, different designs. Some people have different shaped hands and different preferences. They could easily sell the extra paddles at a profit. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe.
Enemy killed.
Nice kill. Getting shot at. Decoy escape. Horizon, never fear. Mirage is here.
Stand back. Not the clock is firing. Serving them a knuckle sandwich.
Just a tick. Heal it up.
Yeah, I think this place needs a little more.
You are the Apex Champions.